Hello and welcome everyone. This is an English translation of a Rotary presentation that I had for a local Rotary group where I introduced Rotary to the problem definition phase of my PhD doctorate research studies in international relations. I'm a PhD doctoral student, research student in international relations at a university based in America called IICSE University. I'm also a research fellow at another university called Eudoxia Research University in America. They also have facilities in India, Eudoxia Research Center. Um, I do my research, however, in cooperation with many other institutions and research universities around the world, including Foreign Affairs, Washington Post, World Economic Forum, Brennan Center for Justice at New York University School of Law, um, the Hoover Institution of Stanford University, the Council on Foreign Relations, Vienna School of International Studies, the Political Science Department at Troy University, APSIA is also an organization I work with, the School of Diplomacy and International Relations at Seton Hall University School of Diplomacy and International Relations at Columbia University, which is hosting also the World Leaders Forum, which I tend to participate in with great interest, and also the International Relations Department at Webster University in Vienna. It's a private university in Vienna. I also do research at the Bush School of Government and Public Service at Texas University, and so on. Um, However, I started my interest in international relations many years ago, almost, around 30 years ago when I first did my master's studies at Chalmers University of Technology in Sweden. I was, in those days, a board member of something called the Chalmers USA program. I'm trying to show you this one, but it doesn't show on the screen. I was also responsible for international relations at the Business School of Gothenburg, the Business and Law School of Gothenburg in Sweden, where I, for example, managed a project about the European Union in year 1992 before the Swedish elections to join the European Union in 1994. In those days, it was not at all called the European Union. It had no federal ambitions at all, no political ambitions. It was just called the European Community to facilitate international trade between the countries in Europe in those days, long before the euro appeared. Um, Things have changed since then, and recently every Swedish citizen has received in the mailbox a brochure with important information to Swedish citizens. If the crisis comes or the war happens, is the title of this brochure. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the current affairs, the current situation, and what's happening in my field of studies, my part of studies in international relations. And before we begin, I'm just going to I'm going to lighten a candle here. I have a match here, and here I have a Buddha statue. And it's burning here now. A candle for Buddha. I'm going to place this above a book called The Hymn of Asia, which I have read. I have already read it, and I believe that I became something called Bodhi, which means that you're enlightened, you have reached full spiritual insight and awareness. Um, so that's what I have completed and done. But yeah, now I'm going to start with my presentation, which I held for Rotary at Café Sågtorp in Sigmon in Sweden. That's not a very famous place, but some really famous people have been there, have visited the place. I'm going to also explain that, but I'm not going to show you the slides just because of copyright issues and uh, plagiarism issues. So I'm just going to speak and talk to you in this recording. To begin with, I'm starting with here a slide where when I was a child in school, my school teacher was asking us small little students, kids, what do you want to work with when you become an adult? And everybody has to sort of figure out if they want to be like a truck driver or a policeman or work in a kitchen or a cleaner or a teacher or something. They want to know the profession. That's what the focus was. However, a lady at Rotary, she had read a book, and in that book, the same question, similar phrase appeared, where the question was, "What do you want to become when you become an adult?" And the boy answered, "I want to become kind. I want to become friendly. I want to become a good person." Yeah, that's a very different answer. It's not a maybe a profession, or maybe it is the most important profession. Um, Maybe a priest or something. He wants to become kind. But in my research, then, is one of the main questions and main problems, the main unanswered questions, and the real issue is, what does it mean to be friendly? What does it mean to be kind? Is that obvious, or is it not obvious? Do you believe you're kind? And what is kindness to you? Is it the same thing as what I believe to be kind and friendly? Well, I don't think so. Every person has a different definition of what it means to be kind and friendly. I can just show you an example here. I went to a concert in Berlin and I met what I would say the most beautiful and friendly girl from Stockholm at the concert. And you know what she did? She gave me a bottle of Jägermeister. Jägermeister is an alcoholic drink with a Christian cross on it. It has a Christian cross on it, and she gave it to me. And in those days, I mean, that was a long time ago now. It's 15 years ago. In those days, I thanked her and I drank the alcohol. But after that, I started to think, was that really a good thing to drink alcohol? Was she really kind and friendly to give me alcohol? I mean, or was it a punishment? Was it a bad, evil thing? Those are really important. I wouldn't say ethical questions. I would say moral questions, because morals is really the definition of what is right and wrong, and ethics is how you live up to what is right and wrong. That means if your moral says that it's bad to drink alcohol, for example, a Muslim, his moral code, his law, is saying that it's forbidden to drink alcohol. And if he drinks alcohol, then he is violating the moral code, and he's out of ethics, it's bad ethics. That's what ethics is all about. You have morals, and then you have your own ethics here. And as long as you're in compliance with the morals, you're in good ethics. But if you're not, you're in bad ethics. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about moral codes and ethics in international relations and how those things can perhaps become improved. If we go to the next slide, we're going to see a little bit of the background and history here. I have a picture of not a friend, but a business contact, I would say, a relation I had in London, in the city of London. I used to work in big banks in London. I used to work with what used to be the investment banking division of Bank of America, Robertson Stevens, which was in the year 2000, one of the main investment banks on Wall Street. After that, I was working at Mitsubishi UFJ Asset Management, which is one of the world's largest investors and the owner of, for example, Morgan Stanley on Wall Street. Mitsubishi UFJ Asset Management has more than $3 trillion under management. It's larger than the entire US economy. Right? I sort of felt that I wanted to do something different, and I wanted to make a career change. It was just a feeling I had. So I went to Mr. Jonathan Evans at he was in those days the chairman of Salmons Group, an important recruitment firm in London. When I came into his office, he was sitting in like strange clothes, almost looking like these Scottish people having skirts on men and things like that. And I was feeling a little bit awkward because I'm not English, I'm not Scottish, I'm from Sweden, so it's I was in I knew all the time I was in a foreign land, but still we were trying to cooperate in this so-called European Union on this euro currency. I came into Jonathan Evans' office and he asked me, I mean, he just told me to sit down and then he asked me, Nicholas, where do you want to live? And he really emphasized want. Where do you want to live? I was thinking in my mind, I'm in London, it's pretty okay here, but do I really want to live here now? Australia, America, yeah, I got paradise places like Barbados or Hawaii or European Union. Eventually, I came to like Switzerland is a sort of an okay country to me. But do I really want to live in Switzerland? Yeah, maybe, but it's not the biggest dream of my dream. So I just told Jonathan Evans I want to live in Monaco. Monaco. I want to live in Monaco. And then Jonathan Evans he got a very serious face and he told me, then you must go to war. End of meeting. And I just had to walk out of his office and I had no idea about what war was about. I mean, I was from a very peaceful, neutral Sweden, not been at war for 200 years, this country. Doesn't really have any combat experience at all. I did my neutral military service in Sweden. It's similar to like a Swiss Guards training. Here's a Swiss Guard I have from the Vatican, the neutral Vatican. That's all I know about military things, really. And he told me I had to go to war. And yeah, if we move on to the next slide, I'm going to show you what war ended up being. War ended up being that here in this box, I got actually two marriage rings, two. Here's my Catholic marriage ring. And I'm married to a Catholic lady from Venezuela. I met her in South Miami Beach in Florida in America. We got married on a Caribbean island that belongs to Venezuela. It's called Isla de Margarita, this Caribbean island. And then we went to honeymoon on Barbados, and then we went back to London, and where we were living together. So I got married in a Catholic church on Isla de Margarita in Venezuela. However, the Vatican claims that this lady is no Catholic. She's the mafia, and she's Jewish. Yeah, then I started to get into religion, and eventually I ended up in the Church of Scientology in Milan, where I purchased another marriage ring. So I got two marriage rings, and there's a Scientology marriage ring with the infinity symbol on it. It's a symbol for God. And eventually I got married in the Vatican City, in the Vatican, with a lady called Frau Anita. Frau Anita from Russia. She's a Russian lady, but I met her in Berlin, and I described her as my Monaco princess. And that's really what the war is all about. She's my Monaco princess, but you know what? The Swedish tax authorities, they believe that they are God, and that I'm married with a Catholic lady from Venezuela. And they say she's not Catholic. She is my wife only. She's just a materialistic body. She has no soul, no spirit, nothing. She only has to work and pay taxes. That's all. That's the only religion that Sweden, secular Sweden, has these days. So I got married with two ladies. I got two wives, which is illegal in Sweden. I'm violating the law in Sweden, but Sweden doesn't recognize a Scientology wife. They just say in the document. You only have one wife registered at the tax office. So I only have a lady I've not seen for 20 years from Venezuela. That's that's the ethics of Sweden. And that comes back to my original question. When you drink alcohol, what is really the moral code and what is right and wrong? Sweden has a moral code, which is the Swedish law, which says only one thing really. It says gender equality between men and women. Women are equal to men, which means that men must be equal to women, leading to that boys they want to change sex at school just to get a better life. Yeah, that's where Sweden is heading. But I'm going to talk about my research now, and I'm doing research in America at the USA University, not at all in Sweden, far away from Sweden. And I'm doing my research in liberal arts. Before we go into that, I'm going to just show you a few other items. And here is a pen. I'm holding it in my hand here, a pen from NATO's, I said 50-year summit in Berlin, in East Berlin, to Rotary, but the correct thing is that this is actually the 60-year anniversary pen that I have from NATO was established 1949 to secure our future in Europe. I got this pen in year 2009, which means that it was the 60 years anniversary in East Berlin because, oh, funny enough, even East Berlin is a member of NATO, and I think the Russians they disagree with that decision, but East Berlin is a part of NATO. Um, and then I have here, I have my Swiss knife from the Swiss Guards in the Vatican City. I bought this Swiss knife actually directly from the Swiss Guards protecting the Vatican and the Pope and the Bible. So I have this Swiss knife from the Vatican City, and I'm also going to show you some books. And one of the books I have here is a book about the Swiss Guards, the neutral Swiss Guards, which are protecting the neutral country of the Vatican City. The Vatican City is not Italy, really. It is located in Italy, but and it's located in Rome. But the Vatican City is a separate state, a neutral state, defended and protected by the Swiss Guards, and not necessarily by Italy. It's two different states, Italy and the Vatican. The Vatican is a neutral. I wouldn't say country, but maybe it's a country because they have their own passports. They used to have their own currency. It's a state. It's a neutral state, and so on. And the Vatican, to me, reminds me and of many similarities with neutral Switzerland, actually. And therefore, I also have a real Swiss knife from Switzerland. I bought this, I think, 15 years ago, around 15 years ago in Switzerland. But 10, 15 years ago, I saw that Switzerland was moving in what I perceived being a pretty right, straight direction, while Sweden was moving in the wrong direction. It was sort of moving away from neutrality. Sweden has been a neutral country for 200 years, but Switzerland has been neutral for 500 years and has much more experience. And in my opinion, the Swiss neutrality is of much higher stability and quality than the Swedish neutrality was. And therefore, in this Swiss knife, I decided outside of neutral Liechtenstein to print my own Swedish citizen social security number, you call it in America, social security number, on this Swiss knife. So I put my Swedish social security number on a Swiss knife just to ensure that I myself will remain neutral forever, no matter what happens to Sweden. I saw 15, 20 years ago that Sweden, it was obvious even 20 years ago on 9/11, 2001, actually, that Sweden was failing as a neutral country. When I was sitting in London, I saw that Sweden was a failed state. That was what I saw. And But I'm doing my PhD in international relations, and it's not a scientific PhD. It's a liberal arts. It's an arts education. And arts is a completely different field to what I'm used to because I'm an engineer by background. I'm a finance guy. I'm used to numbers and real factual data. If you have $10, you have $10, and that's it. No argument. But if you look at the $10 bill, it's pretty artistic. I mean, you have some beautiful pictures on the money, and that's where art comes into play. I'm doing liberal arts now, and just a few words on liberal arts. Liberal arts, the purpose of liberal arts is to produce an emotional reaction. Emotional reaction. And what does that mean? I mean, I'm going to just give you a few examples of emotional reaction from art. The most extreme emotional reaction maybe is a book here by Mr. Marx. Mr. Marx is a guy living in Berlin. Uh, he lives in Berlin. He is a sort of a different artist. He believed that he is the top sprayer, and he even has a trademark on that to be he and his team are the top sprayers. And what is a top sprayer? Top sprayer is a person that is painting graffiti. And they're specialized in painting graffiti on trains. And they're not small guys because one day a group of these top sprayers they decided in Berlin and various places across Germany that they were going to take a car and drive to Rome with 3,000 cans of paint and paint graffiti on the trains in Rome for 1 month, full time, every night, not daytime. At night they're painting graffiti because nobody can find them easily, so they can get away with what they're doing. I mean, they know it's sort of a crime to paint on trains, but they're obsessed about their artistic activities, and that's why they're doing it. I mean, they painted up 3,000 cans of paint on trains in Rome, and they took pictures of it, and then they published this book, Viva Roma, that I have here in my hand. And that's real art that really is producing an emotional impact. It creates emotions. Some people say, that's illegal. That's disgusting. Other people say, that's beautiful. That's creative. You understand? An artist is an artist. Some people hate him and say he's wrong. Other people say they love him. They say he's our idol. We like him very much. He's doing the right thing. He's expressing freedom in Europe, where there is no freedom otherwise. There is no right and wrong here. It's just art. It's creating an emotional impact. Other people creating emotional impact. I have a book here, a book written about the rock band, the Sisters of Mercy. Paint My Name in Black and Gold is the title. Maybe Mr. Marx will do it one day. And the Sisters of Mercy is doing artistic music. Some people like it, other people hate it. I say that's the most disturbing, disgusting music they've ever heard. While other people say, we love it, we've never heard anything better. They go to every concert around the world. That's what art is, emotional impact. Everybody should know about Kiss, the rock band Kiss from the 1970s, and Mr. Gene Simmons with a long tongue. He has written a book as well, artistic book. It's called Ladies of the Night, where he's writing about the oldest profession in the world, prostitution. That is something that really can upset some people, and it really can make some people very happy too. When Gene Simmons, he loved the prostitutes. He had sex with 10,000 beautiful, sexy prostitutes around the world. And he said, I'm happily unmarried after that. He was really happy. As an artist, he creates emotional impact. People can talk about him forever, and they have been doing so. Every journalist likes to talk about an artist like that. When I went to my first Rotary meeting in Kalmar in Sweden, there was a person who was talking about a CD. He said, I'm going to talk about a CD about Mozart. Here I have a CD playing Mozart music. That's also art. During my Rotary meeting, I was focusing on this CD instead. Uh, it's a CD that I bought from the Swiss Guards in the Vatican City. It's called Christmas with the Swiss Guards. Christmas with the Swiss Guards. And I was playing this music for Rotary in Café Sågtorp so they could hear the Christmas music, get into the Christmas spirit, uh, and have a good time when I was presenting my PhD research. Here is a CD by the Sisters of Mercy called Floodland, and I think that's more important today than ever before, um, since Noah's Ark, really, because we've been seeing floodings happening everywhere. We've seen cities and towns in France being 1 meter underwater, Sicilia almost drowning, Mallorca underwater, Malaga underwater. Thailand is swimming these days. I mean, all the streets in many towns in Thailand are underwater. It's floodland. And this artist, he was singing about floodland. I don't know if the prediction is it's going to be Noah's Ark again. Hopefully not, but it certainly is floodland in many places today. And here's also a CD by, it's about the Hymn of Asia, the book where I turn on the candle in honor of Buddha. It's still burning. Um, Real art is inviting the receiver of the art to a two-way communication, which means that I'm presenting the art and I am expecting the people who are looking at what I'm doing to also give me comments, feedback, questions. I want to establish like a two-way communication with my art, like every other artist. I think just like IICSE University has been teaching me that conflicts are very good. Conflicts are good and important because conflicts stimulate innovation, problem solving, and with intelligent, good people, conflicts also result in problem solving in good cooperation. That's what good, intelligent people do when they are exposed to a real conflict. They solve it together in a constructive way. And afterwards, I say, we really had a conflict, but we both won on the solution. And that's what, for example, China has been doing. China is saying, okay, we have a conflict here with America. Let's find another win-win solution and let's make more money together. China has been very successful in international relations over the last 20, 30 years just because they take a conflict as something positive, an opportunity to create another win-win opportunity. Let's say, for example, to America, okay, you're angry with us. Let's find a solution. We offer you cheap labor so you get cheap products and you can buy them cheaper than if you're producing them yourselves. America say, not everyone in America likes that. I mean, we're going to put now, high protection, high border controls, tariffs to stop China exporting to America. They can do so, and it's not a win-win anymore. It will be perhaps a lose-lose. Um, the important thing is to use a conflict as an opportunity to make sure that you're not looking only at your own interest, but also to the other party to find a win-win solution. And yeah, the final point I want to say about art is that complex things are things that you have not understood. If it's complex to you, you have not understood it. If you can express it in a simple way, in only like one sentence or like one painting, one picture, then you have understood it because simplicity is the goal of art. And that's why many successful artists, they just have like a very simple art they are producing. It can be just a like a like a rectangle on a painting or a few lines or something. Modern art. My goal is to complete my PhD over the next year, by December 2025. I hope to have a real PhD thesis to present to you. I don't have that now. I'm just in the problem definition phase, and I respect and admire a few good people who have been doing good things in international relations before me, such as Henry Kissinger and Samuel P. Huntington. Those are probably the few people I would say, from my opinion, have been contributing to the field in international relations in a real way. I hope to do something meaningful as well as a doctorate student. Before starting to talking about international relations, I just want to touch on the current situation in Ukraine, and we still have the problem here where Russia continues to threaten with using atom bombs, and of course, America and NATO is not innocent to that, and they are also prepared to use atom bombs if the conflict is escalating. I think that's a very foolish thing to escalate the conflict, because there are bombs, for example, hydrogen bombs, that are 5,000 times more powerful than an atom bomb. The atom bomb of over Hiroshima and Nagasaki that ended World War II were quite small atom bombs compared to what exists today. A hydrogen bomb is like 5,000 atom bombs, such atom bombs, and just one hydrogen bomb can destroy something and murder something 5 times larger than London or Paris or Berlin. So I think if anyone is starting to use hydrogen bombs, it will just trigger off chain reactions where the other party will strike back, and will just trigger off all the bombs, and nobody can survive on this planet. It's a very dangerous situation right now. I hope hopefully it will be possible to manage through in the name of survival for life on this planet. Next slide here is talking about authentic leadership. And what is authentic leadership? Authentic leadership. George W. Bush was talking about authentic leadership in masterclass, and he said that the important thing for him was to have his faith and religion in order to have a cause greater than self. That means that he had something that was bigger than himself when he was referring to the Bible and the Christian message. Of course, people would criticize him, but he could endure, he said, because he referred to something larger than self. I mean, he was not only defending himself, but he was defending a whole religion, the Christian faith. And that was what George W. Bush meant with authentic leadership. In Rotary, there are also values. You can say when you're active in Rotary, you have the Rotary values standing above yourself. And as long as they do, nobody in Rotary can criticize you, because you're in compliance with the Rotary values. However, if you look at the governments, just took an example when I was talking to Rotary here in Sweden, I took the Swedish government. And I think the Swedish government is a very good example, because it's a secular government to a big extent, secular. Even though they have a Christian Democratic Party, I think the government can and is considered to be quite secular by most people. And when those people are talking about authentic leadership, they have something above themselves, which is the political ideology they are representing, like socialism or conservatism or liberalism, or like Sweden Democrats or the Christian Democrats. Yeah, they might have some Christian ideas, but I've never heard them expressing much of it. Anyway, that's how the Swedish government is, but I think when you're asking yourself, what do these people have in common? I mean, they're living in Sweden, they're Swedish, but when you listen to their opinions, it's rarely they say something in common. My point is that they don't have much like a religion binding them together. They have created something called the value proposition, the value ground for schools and education. And it's talking about something like human rights and democracy, just like how America wants countries to be. But yeah, uh, they don't have any sort of higher values than democracy and human rights. And in my opinion, it's quite questionable what type of human rights they're referring to. But we're going to come to that later. I'm just comparing the Swedish government to the Pope in the Vatican. The Pope in the Vatican, he really has a different authentic leadership where he can refer to God and the Bible as something greater, a greater cause than self in a really proper way. I mean, nobody can sort of say that the Pope is wrong and win it if the Pope is just referring to something in the Bible, because he say that it's been like that for 2,000 years. That's what the Bible says, and that's my leadership. He's the Pope, and it should be. Um, Today, these days, the Vatican is offering news and even some TV channels in the Swedish language and other languages. And the Pope is a leader. He is only one person, while the Swedish government, they have like 5 or 10 different political parties arguing among each other. And in Sweden, there is a saying that the more chefs you have, the worse soup you get. The Pope is cooking the soup himself and making excellent soup. Perhaps that's what some people say. If we look back into history, into the Bible, we're coming to Adam, Eva, the apple, the snake, the God, the Garden of Eden, and the forbidden fruit. And there is also some writings that God was very disappointed with what happened with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and therefore um, people are never allowed to come back to Garden of Eden again, according to the Bible at least, and people must live and die in a sort of a struggle, and they should suffer. The Bible is quite harsh in that way. People should suffer in pain, and life is not supposed to be a paradise because, yeah, people are not allowed to go back to paradise, Garden of Eden again, according to the Bible. On the next slides, I'm showing just some painting of paradise. You can imagine a beautiful beach on Florida or Hawaii or something. And then my question is, find 5 things that's wrong in paradise. Imagine you're thinking and working hard all year, and you say, I'm going to take that lovely vacation. I'm going to go to Florida with a lot of money in my wallet. I'm really going to enjoy life. When you come there, is it that great? What went wrong? Did something go wrong? Or is paradise a possibility? Try to find 5 things that is wrong in paradise, and you see that it's difficult to construct paradise on Earth. And the next slide is showing a beautiful villa on the beach, and it was around 20 years ago. I was working in finance, making big money. And I said, okay, I'm going to treat my parents very well for their 60 years birthdays. It's soon my 60th birthday, but anyway, I said, okay, I'm going to invite my parents to a luxury villa in Saint-Tropez on the French Riviera. I paid, in today's money, around $20,000 to rent a house for a week on the French Riviera. $20,000 was a lot of money for me, even for me. But that was not the point. I wanted to really do something nice to my parents because they have been treating me sort of okay all my life. And I said, okay, the least I can do is to try to give the family a vacation. And we came to the house in Saint-Tropez. My Catholic wife, she didn't want to join us. She said she got angry. I'm staying in London. My brother, he didn't want to talk to me. My parents, they started to argue in the house. And eventually, I ended up alone on the beach. And then I went to a party alone. They were celebrating, playing good music. It was Pash Airlines, a music band from Australia that was playing in a bar in Saint-Tropez. And it was a very, very nice party, but I was completely alone, and paradise to me has often been a very lonely experience, which means that paradise is not really a real paradise. It doesn't exist. Anyway, I held my presentation at Café Sågtorp in Sigmund, which is a place where many artists are meeting and lots of paintings on the walls. I was showing Rotary, quite expensive paintings actually on the wall, selling from $700 and up. Um, we got paintings selling for like $2,000 and so on. Yeah. Anyway, going back to international relations and how can international relations be improved? And that's my topic for my research. And yeah, my professor is a professor at IICSE University. He's also the dean, and he has done research at, for example, Oxford University and Columbia University. And he's the one who is going to have to approve my thesis next year. I'm just showing my program simplified. The first 2 years is quite much research studies about international economics, international finance, international law, and the last final third year is more focus on international politics, conflict management, war and peace, these kind of things. I'm showing my grades, and I've been quite successful so far in my studies, having A and B, where A is the top and B is sort of good, and C and D and E is not so good. Um, at Café Sågtorp, Lars and also Patrick are teaching yoga, sitting in positions just like Buddha. There we got the Buddha statue again. And my interest in Eastern activities is more on the spiritual side than the sort of body side these days. So I'm interested in this phenomena called Bodhi. Within Buddhism, Bodhi means the enlightenment that Buddha reached. It means like awakening or enlightenment or understanding of the true nature. Mm. That's what Bodhi is all about. And Buddha has said many wise words. There are many Veda books, probably hundreds of thousands of Veda books over in Asia. One of the things he said is, no matter how hard the past, you can always uh, begin again. And that's something Buddha said, very wise words. I'm going to talk again about liberal arts. And liberal arts is uh, art is the practical implementation of knowledge. So what you know, you can translate into art. If you know something, you can make art. And the purpose of art is to try to achieve a goal through conscious efforts. You want to do something, for example, if you want to make people happy, you make a real effort to make happy music. Um, or if you want to achieve something else, if you want to make people paint graffiti, you write a book about graffiti and say that's art. Art is trying to, like I said, to create a good effect, emotional effect, which is very difficult. It's not easy. It's difficult to be a good artist. And very few people are good artists just because it is so difficult. Going back in history to my studies in year 1990, I was at Florida International University in Miami Beach, and there I met a Jewish person called with the name Paul Kobe. And we became good friends. He told me that he had survived a Nazi concentration camp during World War II. And eventually I asked him, Paul, why did World War II happen? And he just said, World War II happened because Europe has some different banks. That's all he said. He said nothing else. Europe has some different banks, and that's very important statement to me because I ended up being a banker after that, and banking is important to me, and banking has to do with peace and war in the end, according to Paul Colby, who survived World War II from a concentration camp. So that's why I'm doing my PhD thesis. And for example, I do have a book from the David van Buren Museum in Brussels. David van Buren is not maybe that famous to people outside of banking, but David van Buren, he he's from Holland. I think he was from Amsterdam, and he was Jewish, and he decided to move to Brussels, and he was living and working in Brussels as a very successful banker. He became like the chief boss of a bank, and he was making good money, and everything was fine until World War II happened, and the Nazis, they put him on the death list. They intended to murder him, but at that point, David van Buren, he purchased a ticket to travel to New York City with his wife. So they just left Brussels and took off to New York City, checked into Plaza Hotel, where he stayed in luxury at Plaza Hotel during the whole World War II. And in order to do something over in America during the war, he decided to teach ethics at the leading universities of America. So he was a teacher in ethics at American universities during World War II. He was basically teaching the elite universities like Harvard, Stanford, MIT, Princeton, what is ethics. And that's what ethics has been since then. And after World War II, this was sort of formalized in the book. It's difficult to show it here. Decision in Germany. Decision in Germany by General Lucius de Clay. General Lucius de Clay was uh, the responsible for the American occupation of Berlin after World War II. And his philosophy was sort of, I would say, maybe something like Christian, Jewish inspired. That's how America is, very much Christian, Jewish continent, and that's what became the ethics under General Lucius de Clay in Berlin after World War II as the leadership. At the World Leaders Forum at the School of Diplomacy and International Relations of Columbia University, I met the former president of the United Nations, Saba Kurusi. And what made an impression on me was his focus on the Albert Einstein's doomsday clock, where the president of the United Nations said that it's only 90 seconds left now on this doomsday clock until it's going to be a global catastrophe. It used to be 15 minutes, it's only symbolically 15 minutes left on this doomsday clock until a global catastrophe. Not long time ago, I say maybe 10, 15 years ago or something, it was like 15 minutes. Now it's only 90 seconds left, and it means that Nobel Prize winners and very intelligent people who are setting this clock every year feel that we're very close, closer than at any point since World War II to a global catastrophe. It doesn't look good in international relations, and that's something that I listen carefully to. My background is that I have a Christian confirmation in the Church of Eid's Church in Segmon, where I held my presentation for Rotary. So my presentation to Rotary goes together with my Christian church confirmation. I think I did it for a good reason, to try to do a good thing, to try to help people to reach an understanding within Rotary uh, for what I have learned in the Christian church. I've not only done a Christian confirmation, I've spent 3 years full time on religious studies in the Vatican City as well, and much more than that. But I've also done a neutral military service, and next picture shows me with the soldiers at Infantry I2 in Karlstad, Sweden, where I did my neutral military soldier, similar to the training of a neutral Swiss guard in the Vatican. And I really do mean that because uh, Sweden in those days said, with God and victorious weapons. That means that my military service was in those days a religious defense. However, when I started at university after that, Chalmers University, they also have a church. They call it church, but nobody has found anything religious there. People, they're sitting there doing mathematics, physics. In those days, science was like almost like a religion, and people around the world felt that science was bringing people together. Science and technology, I mean, they were making new discoveries and they were sharing it cross borders, and no consideration to religious beliefs. They say, okay, science is for everyone and it's open to everybody. But I didn't really study what I would describe as only scientific things when I went to university, because I studied something called industrial engineering and management. And one of the first textbooks I got was a big book from MIT by Paul A. Samuelson, a Nobel Prize winner in economics. He had written a book about economics. And to argue that that book is scientific, I'm not sure that that will win any arguments in, for example, Russia or like Iran or places like that. I mean, economics is more like a philosophy, almost like an art. Some people say that investing is an art. To say that investing on Wall Street is scientific, that's nonsense. It's not scientific. It's only an art. Warren Buffett is an artist. It's not scientific, even though it looks like he's using sophisticated mathematics to make his decisions. In the end, he's making it on a gut feeling. It's a feeling. It's an emotional thing to make investments. You cannot you cannot rationalize it like you can do in physics, mathematics. It's not the same thing. And today there is now, for example, Chalmers Islamic Association. The Muslims, they're quite active at my university these days, and they're praying 5 times a day. I don't know if they do it in the church. I think they have a different place, but the Chalmers Church is evolving and it's changing. And the Muslims, they have a big presence now these days at university, which they didn't have in the past. It used to be like science is a secular thing, and we just focus here on the mathematical problem. We have to find the solution to the mathematical problem, no matter what religion you have. And that used to be the Chalmers Church. Stanford University, they have also a church. It's multi-faith church. It's more religious. They don't say it's non-religious, and they say it's for every faith at Stanford University. I received a recommendation letter from my professor at University of California, Berkeley, and that recommendation letter was like less secular than in Sweden because it had a Christian cross from University of Dayton School of Engineering on it. And that shows a little bit the difference in my research here that I'm seeing between America and Sweden, because America is more spiritual, has more religious faith. Café Sågtorp. I'm showing here a slide where actually the Swedish defense minister, Mr. Peter Hultqvist, He came to Café Sågtorp to discuss Sweden's NATO application. It was described like it should be a discussion. And I joined this meeting. I met Peter Hultqvist there, said hello to him, and I was trying to talk to him. But it, um, I mean, I had good arguments. Neutrality from a finance, economic point of view, religious point of view, military point of view. I saw news from my perspective where headlines said that neutral countries will stay out of World War III. World War III will not affect neutral countries. It's safer, more secure to be neutral. But not only that, I mean, all neutrality will also attract money when times become more uncertain. So I felt it's better from an economic, financial point of view to be neutral because you're attracting investments by just by being neutral in an uncertain environment, uncertain world. And it's not only Switzerland that is neutral. Andorra, Austria, Costa Rica, Ghana, Haiti, Georgia tries to be neutral. Haiti, Ireland, Liechtenstein, Malta, Mexico, Moldavia, Monaco, Mongolia, Panama, Rwanda, San Marino, Serbia, yeah, Switzerland, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Vatican City. Those are countries that are described as neutral countries. They have neutral ambitions or they are neutral. According to sources, if you look at, for example, Wikipedia, you find all these nations listed as neutral countries. Around 20 neutral countries out of 180 countries on the world, in the world. So I say, okay, 10% of all countries are neutral. That's yeah, that's quite a lot of neutral countries. And I felt that neutrality was important to me, so I decided to try to communicate to Peter Hultqvist, the Swedish defense minister, that I want Sweden to remain neutral. So I gave a big letter to the local town hall representative for the town hall, which she handed over to Peter Hultqvist. However, the Swedish defense minister, he could not listen to my message. He could not listen. He just said, like, the opinion polls show that Swedish people want to join NATO, and that was all he could say. I say, I mean, these arguments are against it. He couldn't listen. And why couldn't he listen? Just because I describe him as the marionette of the people. And that goes to the Swedish parliament and the Swedish government. You can say constitution if you translate it to Americans. It's not a real constitution, but you can say constitution. And the constitution of Sweden says that all power, all governmental power, all like public power comes from the people. And the parliament is the representative of the people. And this constitution was put in place in year 1974, and then the Swedish royal king lost all power. That's what happened in Sweden in 1974. The constitution was changed. The big constitutional change where the king lost all power and the people got all the power, which is alarming to in some ways because, as some people have said, democracy in that way can go in any direction. You can benefit from it or you can lose everything you have from what's going on because it has no direction. It comes from the opinion of the people. And right now, the opinion of the people was that Sweden should join NATO just because of a war in Ukraine. I said, just because of the war in Ukraine, neutrality is more important than ever. We were not in agreement, me and the Swedish defense minister. I will say that that comes from how Sweden has become a secular country where the authentic leadership, what is above yourself, is no longer God. It is the opinion of the people. The opinion of the people. It's an opinion. There's nothing right or wrong with it. There is like no moral code here judging it. If people want to take drugs in school instead of studying, that's an opinion. And it will, and it can be a majority opinion eventually. Sweden is led by a popular opinion. It has no moral code standing above it. There is no God. And that's like if you were trying to implement that in the Vatican City on the Pope, it would be like the Pope was going to preach all the sins of the people instead of saying the moral code from God. The Pope should say, you should drink alcohol and you should go and have sex with prostitutes because that's what people are doing in Italy. Wow. No. I mean that's how the government in Sweden today is operating. They are led by the people and they have no moral code standing above it. The Constitution has no moral code in it. But they've been trying to create a moral code calling the school's value proposition, the value ground for the schools, for teachers, based on some illusion of on human rights and democracy. That contradicts academic research. For example, Harvard professor Samuel P. Huntington, he wrote in the book The Clash of Civilizations and the Remaking of World Order that if you're looking on a global basis, culture and civilization is the highest denominator that brings people together. And a civilization at its highest level is normally a religion. It can be Buddhism, it can be Christianity, it can be Islam or something else. But a civilization is usually and normally a religion, which means that in the end, Harvard professor Samuel P. Huntington is implicitly saying that God is above the World Economic Forum. That's a big statement, even though he's mentioning that World Economic Forum is also perhaps becoming a culture, but it's not really a culture. It goes back to Samuel P. Huntington's argument that the future politics is religion. The future politics is civilizational. The future politics is religious. That's what he is saying, and that's where I'm coming from in my academic research, that politics is religion. It's not populism, it's religion. The moral code above the people is a religion. Because that's what academic research at Harvard University has concluded. No matter what the Swedish government may say here where I'm based. The Swedish government is trying to establish what they call a culture canon. Canon, I don't know how to translate. I interpreted that as a cultural canon. With a professor from University of California, Berkeley, with the name of Lars Trädgård, a Swedish guy who is a professor at University of California, Berkeley. He wants to define the Swedish culture based on his understanding of history, I believe, and he comes from an understanding that Sweden is a welfare state. And currently, there is a lot of tensions with regards to the Swedish culture definition in this culture canon that Professor Lars Trädgård is trying to complete next year to define the Swedish culture. I mean, Swedish culture is an ancient culture. It goes back to the Vikings. It goes back to Christianity. It has 200 years of neutrality. It's not only a welfare state. It's a lot more things that is in Swedish culture than just a mere welfare state over the last 50 years. So if someone from a historical perspective is going to try to define Swedish culture as gender equality, I think then they're on the wrong Viking boat, so to say. Here at Café Sågtorp, they're selling books about the culture of Värmland, which is the county here, the local county. Värmland has a very different culture compared to Stockholm. Stockholm has often been living in their own world, far away from the countryside, and it's um, it's been very different. Sometimes even I wouldn't say conflicts, but disagreements. Disagreements. It's been lots of disagreements between Stockholm and the countryside. I used to have good relations with the Supreme Commander in Sweden, uh, Mr. Michael Biden. He used to be the Military Commander of Sweden. I was in contact with him on LinkedIn, and he thanked me for a good friendship during difficult times when Sweden was applying for NATO membership. I asked him why should Sweden join NATO, and he said that it's a consequence of Sweden having joined the European Union a long time ago, because once Sweden joined the European Union, Sweden had to participate in like NATO troop activities, and therefore he felt that because Sweden is a member of the European Union, Sweden has to join NATO. I said that's completely wrong. To be a member of the European Union has nothing to do with NATO. That's two separate things. Everything that Sweden is doing with NATO is voluntary, just like United Nations. United Nations has, of course, peacekeeping military troops. You can join them if you want to support peace, but I mean, Sweden has been a member of the United Nations for many years, and there has never been like a discussion about joining NATO. Just because Sweden is a member of United Nations, which has perhaps a headquarter in New York, but also a headquarter in Geneva. So, um, these things are not really related. There is no European Union constitution, which means that the nation states are independent, and Sweden is still Sweden, even though European laws are trying to sort of supersede and stand above Swedish law. Is nothing really in the European laws that are implying that Sweden must become a NATO member. And suddenly, the Supreme Commander, he just disconnected me, and he sort of didn't want to continue the conversation with me anymore. Then we come to the next slide where Buddha is saying, if a ruler rules well, assist him. If he rules with violence, do not assist him, and let that be his penalty. That's the wisdom of Buddha. And on the next slide, I am comparing what has happened to Sweden compared to Switzerland with regards to the war in Ukraine. And I see here that Sweden has spent already 0.27 billion euros on humanitarian aid to Ukraine, 0.3 billion. But Sweden has also spent 4.3 billion on military weapons to murder. Sweden has supported Ukraine to the tune of 4.3 billion euros with weapons and only 0.3 humanitarian aid. While Switzerland is the opposite. Switzerland supported Ukraine with 0.75 billion in humanitarian aid and nothing in military weapons, nothing at all. And looking into the future, the Kiel Institute for the World Economy, the Kiel Institute for the World Economy is showing data that the future commitments here are that Sweden has committed to spend 0.65 billion euros on humanitarian aid in Ukraine, but a massive 9.14 billion 9.14 billion on military weapons. So it's like doubling the military spending in the future to Ukraine, while Switzerland is doing the opposite. They're going to increase the humanitarian aid to 2.25 billion Swiss franc euros and nothing for military weapons. In total, uh, it Sweden um, Sweden is committed to spending on military weapons much more than 50,000 brand new Ferraris. I mean, I could get a new Ferrari from my taxes. I myself have been paying $100 million in capital gain taxes when I was working on asset management at Mitsubishi, for example. I've been paying $100 million in taxes. I would expect the Swedish government to give me a new Ferrari instead of sending, more than 50,000 brand new Ferrari cars to weapons in Ukraine to murder people. It's not humanitarian at all what Sweden is doing in NATO. It's violent, and according to Buddha, if a ruler rules well, assist him. If he rules with violence, do not assist him, and let that be his penalty. I say, okay, I'm not going to assist the Swedish government anymore. I can't vote anymore. Because on September 11, 2001, I was working at Robertson Stephens, which used to be the investment banking division of Bank of America. It was based in London. September 11 happened, but before that, I visited the World Trade Center in New York. I went up to the top floor and I met a Jewish investor at Fiduciary Trust. He was sitting in an enormously huge office and he told me, I'm Jewish. I said, okay, you can have any religion you want, but I'm here to talk finance with you. I did. But that was the summer 2001. And after that, September 11 happened. Muslim terrorists attacked the World Trade Center. The Jew I met survived, but the World Trade Center collapsed, and I felt in this conflict, if there is a conflict between Jewish investors and Muslim terrorists, I'm staying completely neutral. I'm Swedish. I'm Swedish. I'm not Jewish. I'm not Muslim. Robertson Stephens was closed down after September 11. I had to find a new job. I started to work with Mitsubishi Trust International at that time. I got my business card and it just said analyst, and I was a junior. A junior at Mitsubishi is working for the largest bank and investor in the world with more than $30 trillion assets under management, larger than the US economy, the owner of Morgan Stanley, and 40 times larger than the main investor in Sweden, which is the Wallenberg Group Investor AB. In that position, I just travel around the world, mainly in Europe, to meet the CEOs and the board of directors of major corporations such as EADS, MAN, Vinci, Hochtief, Ferrovial, Lufthansa, Siemens, any of those companies in Sweden. Volvo, I met the CEO of Volvo. We went out on a boat trip even. I met Assa Abloy's CEO, Atlas Copco, Skanska, SKF, ABB, Ericsson CEO, and so on. That was my job as a junior, and I was analyzing financial data and I was listening to what the CEOs were saying about business. Me and Wall Street, we were traveling constantly around the world, and one time we even had dinner on the Great Wall in China with leaders of industry. However, my Japanese colleagues, they were not so interested in my financial analysis, and they wanted to talk to me about different things. And they told me instead, our favorite movie is Lost in Translation. Lost in Translation. That's what they wanted to talk to me about. They want to become social. They say, Our favorite movie is Lost in Translation. And if I'm talking in English, I'm telling you, there is a lot that is lost in translation when it comes to Swedish, because I'm not speaking Swedish, I'm talking English. So you're interpreting what I'm saying from an English point of view, and you have no idea what I would say in Swedish because it's lost in translation. And that then I got a new business card from my manager, my boss at Mitsubishi UFJ Trust International Limited in those days. And my business card, it said Niklas Gustafsson, CFA. I was now a senior. I was a chartered financial analyst. I had celebrated at I received an email at an internet cafe in Saint-Tropez on the French Riviera where it said I had passed all the requirements to become a chartered financial analyst, and I am now I'm a holder of the CFA designation. That's what it said from America. My Japanese boss said, "We don't recognize the CFA here in Japan." On my business card, it says in Japanese, it says Niklas Gustafsson without the CFA. I say, "Why don't you recognize my hard studies and my credentials? I'm a CFA." My boss, he just said, "No, we don't." Because the ethics of America during World War II was to murder my own father. And he is a research fellow at Stanford University. My boss, he was a very important person in international relations. And he just told me that Japan Japan refuses to accept the CFA ethics. And the CFA just become lost in translation. It's lost in translation. It's gone when you go to Japan. There is no chartered financial analysts in Japan. It's lost in translation. Take a look at the Japanese financial annual report. It's Japanese. It's not English. It's not American. It's Japan. Different ethics. And I say, okay, if you're going to have this argument between Japan and America, between Muslims and Jews on Wall Street, I say, okay, I'm neutral. I don't want to, I'm not Japanese. I'm not American. I'm not Jewish. I'm not Muslim. I'm going to Switzerland. I'm going to Switzerland because I'm neutral. I'm going to a Swiss bank. I don't trust you anymore. You don't have my ethics. I'm out of it. I'm out of it. I'm going to find a real bank. I did. And after that, I was looking at the war in Ukraine. And I said, okay, does Russia really threaten Sweden? I did my military service in Sweden, 1987 to 1988 during the Cold War, the peak of the Cold War, where it was more atom bombs in Russia and America than ever before. And Sweden was a strong country. In those days, Sweden was ranked as the third or the fourth strongest military and economic superpower in the world. Well, Sweden could do well on its own. No need for NATO in Sweden. And after that, Russia uh, has dismantled and reduced the stockpile of nuclear weapons from it used to be a total of 61,000 nuclear warheads. 1988 is today, or yeah, 2017. I have the data here. It says 10,000. It went down from around 70,000 atom bombs to only 10,000. Russia has not many atom bombs anymore. I don't think Sweden is really a target that Russia wants to attack. I mean, Sweden has never really had such bad relations with Russia that Sweden needs to be a member of NATO. Why do I say that? Because during my military service, I was chosen. I was not elected in a democratic way. No, my military superiors, they selected me to be what they call a military company assistant, which is more important than it sounds because I'm then representing the soldiers in different boards, military boards, and also I became responsible for the administration of the soldiers at the Stockholm Castle, and I was also responsible for the military budget at my military unit. So I was becoming like a financial person during my military service. Now I consider myself therefore to be very close to a Swiss banker, a neutral Swiss banker, because I had to be neutral. That was my military service. And this led me to, in May 2024, to send in an application to the Swedish election authority, Valmyndigheten. I sent in an application where I felt a duty to my own country to establish a new political party called Neutrality. I made an application to become the leader of Neutrality in Sweden. And to my own surprise, the Swedish election authority, they approved my application. So, in May 2024, I became the Swedish political party leader of the Neutrality Party. And I became an important political figure in Sweden in that sense, but I was not famous and nobody knows about me. I just started to work on some marketing materials for neutrality, and also I was doing studies on neutrality, and I came across, for example, the book the from America actually, the Vatican and Permanent Neutrality, where um, I concluded in many ways that it seems like neutrality um, has to perhaps be related to some beliefs in Christianity. It's not certain or sure that it's only Christians that can be neutral, but it seems to be related together just from how the Vatican is constructed, from a lot of events since the Bible was written 2000 years ago. It seems like neutrality uh, hangs together with the Christian faith, and therefore I was asking myself, did Sweden really lose neutrality due to secularization? Sweden has been neutral for 200 years, and then Sweden lost neutrality. I was asking myself, was that due to the secularization of Sweden? And my conclusion was that yes, it's more likely that Sweden lost neutrality due to secularization than not. In addition to that, the Swedish democratic system does not support a new political party. You get no funding, no resources, no election documents or anything. It's just a lot of bureaucracy. And I felt that on a sort of um, benefit loss analysis, I felt that to spend the next 20 years or until I retire or something on building up this political party for neutrality. It's just going to be a waste of time trying to convince secular people to go to church. So I felt this is not what I want to do. Um, but for example, Sweden is today a bad country. Used to be a good country, but today, for example, a major German newspaper was describing Sweden as the most dangerous country in Europe. That's true if you exclude Ukraine. If Ukraine is included in Europe, then of course Ukraine is more dangerous than Sweden. But otherwise, Sweden is today the most violent and dangerous country in Europe. And I believe that this danger in Sweden hangs together with the secularization of Sweden. Because the Christian faith is not violent as such. I mean, the Christian faith is saying basic principle is you should not murder. Yeah. Anyway, Sweden has a secular government. If we look at the span of neutrality, we have on one side the Vatican City, which is a neutral state where God is really the predominant leadership. God is the leadership in the Vatican, neutrality. And then we have neutral Liechtenstein, where God is very much also a leadership. In Switzerland, maybe less so, more secular people going on, being in Switzerland with immigration and so, and changed policies. But Switzerland is still neutral. But if you go further, you find Luxembourg, which was one of the founding members of NATO after World War II. However, Luxembourg is an interesting case because Luxembourg also has agreements, for example, with the UK, that Luxembourg is going to be a permanently neutral country forever. Which brings the question again to that, is Luxembourg a neutral country as long as Luxembourg is believes in God and is Christian? And my conclusion is that many people in Luxembourg, even though Luxembourg is in NATO, the people of Luxembourg, they are still quite neutral people. You cannot change that easily if they believe in God and they come from Luxembourg, which has agreements to be a permanently neutral state. At the other far extreme of this spectrum of neutrality, you have Sweden and Finland, where secularization, the secular people, are extremely secular, and Sweden is today the most extreme supporter of, for example, HBTQ, homosexual activities. No other country in the world is more secular in that way, and far away from the Bible. And you then have this spectrum of beliefs where Sweden is at one end and the Vatican is in the other end. And you see what happened that Sweden and Finland, secular countries, they lost neutrality, um, which is expressed in this school value ground, the value proposition for education in Sweden, which is really the only sort of above yourself leadership that Sweden has. Some references to human rights and respect to other people and democracy. And there I think Rotary can play a role when it comes to ethics between secular people and very religious people in within the spectrum of neutrality and NATO. When it comes back to atom bombs, I came myself to the conclusion that you cannot easily use atom bombs because it's more or less a suicide thing to do it, because your enemy will strike back and you will not win anything because both are losing. And there it comes to a religious argument that religious power is standing above military force, in that sense that you cannot use the military force, and therefore you can do is to end up being a religious person. You cannot use you cannot use all the hydrogen bombs because nobody can survive it. So it is a religious thing to not use all weapons, in my opinion. And that's also my religion, Scientology. If you look at the Swedish flag, many people are blind because if you turn the Swedish flag like this, you see a real yellow Christian cross on the Swedish flag. The Swedish flag is today one of the few flags with a Christian cross on it, and Swedish flag represents a very Christian country. It's of the Bible. The Swedish flag is not like any other flag because it's not a secular flag. It's really a Christian cross painted on the flag. So people who are not Christian in Sweden, they are violating the flag, which means that I'm putting into question the religious beliefs of, for example, the Swedish Supreme Commander when he did not want to talk to me anymore because when I was doing my military service, still at my military museum, there are Christian Bibles, which means that my military defense in Sweden was a religious Christian defense. And when it comes to the European Union, the European Union was supposed to be a Christian union originally. I don't know how it is today, which puts a lot of important questions with regards to ethics and finance. And so, Christian neutrality is good, but the Bible does not solve all problems. And in the end, I decided that I wanted to terminate my activities as the party leader for the political party neutrality in Sweden. And on September 11, 2024, I received a letter from the Swedish Election Authority that the Swedish political party neutrality has been successfully uh, uh, filed filed away from the official records. It's not a political party anymore. Neutrality is not a political party anymore, but people who go to church are still religious people in Sweden, which are two different things. And if you look at the recruitment of soldiers in Sweden today, the Swedish army, the Swedish recruitment officers, they're expressing a problem where boys, 2 out of 3 sort of young men cannot qualify for military service because they have so severe mental health problems. They have mental illness. They suffer from mental illness. And what is that? I mean, yeah, uh, it consists of like a lot of diagnosis for ADHD, which is a new psychiatric mental illness that many people have in Sweden. They have depression. They're like depressed, and they're not like suitable for combat just because they may use the gun for suicide or something. So 2 out of 3, I mean 67% of the Swedish young men are not suitable for military service anymore. But we come back to here that originally the Swedish defense is a religious defense where God is it is with God and successful weapons here. And also in NATO, if you look at NATO, Sweden joined NATO. What is sort of the overarching philosophy, the civilization of NATO? What is the religion of NATO? Then you come back to leadership for NATO, like such as George W. Bush. George W. Bush was an American president who was standing up for the Bible and for Jesus Christ. And he was the supreme commander also for NATO, because America is the leadership of NATO. Of course, NATO has some leadership in Brussels, but NATO is nothing without American support. And America is a religious country. And today, when Donald Trump is on his way to become the new next president in America next year in 2025, he has also stated that his policy is to bring back the Bible to America, which means that NATO as such has very religious Christian beliefs in Jesus Christ. And George W. Bush even went so far to say that either you're with me or against me. There is nothing in between when it comes to the Bible and Jesus Christ. So, which puts secular Sweden and secular Finland on the hot spot here in NATO when it comes to like the religious faith of NATO. The Bible, when you go back to the Garden of Eden and Paradise, Eve and Adam, and so it says in the Bible that people are not allowed to get knowledge. But why are people not allowed to get knowledge? Yeah, because they were doing the sin of going into the Garden of Eden and that. Um, so yeah, that's how it is. And therefore, General Lucius de Clay, he managed to take the power in Berlin after World War II, and it's been like that since then. the American occupation of Berlin. Then the American occupation left Berlin actually in when the Berlin Wall came down, and it's been sort of uncertainties with regards to the future leadership, according to, for example, Professor Samuel P. Huntington, who is writing about the clash of civilizations and so on. I myself, I decided to become a religious Scientologist, and I even went so far as I wanted to. I'm going to put on a jacket here now. I'm going to change a little bit my outfit here. Um, so now I'm sitting here in a Scientology volunteer minister jacket. A volunteer minister is something in Scientology wearing the Christian cross. That means that Scientology has no conflict with the Christian faith and the Pope in the Vatican. On the contrary, Scientology actually stands for a second Christian epoch on Earth, led by Scientology. Scientology is, in many ways, supporting the Christian faith, but Scientology as a religion is built on wisdom from all religions. Here is a brochure about the volunteer ministers that I was showing to Rotary, the volunteer ministers. And the volunteer ministers, for example, during COVID-19, the volunteer ministers did the world's largest volunteer effort. There are 200,000 volunteer ministers around the world, and they did the world's largest volunteer effort during COVID-19 to sanitize buildings and cars around the world to protect people from the COVID-19 virus. And that's something you can watch on Scientology.tv. It's called Operation Do Something. Where Scientology volunteer ministers was helping the world to survive COVID-19, while the government was giving people vaccines. Scientology's approach was to instead kill the virus and sanitize clean buildings and so on to get rid of the virus. Scientology was taking a different approach than the governments here. Scientology is today quite a large religion with many million believers. 4 million new people come into Scientology churches every year. And Scientology has a lot of humanitarian projects like the Citizens Commission on Human Rights. I read a brochure on that one. They also have Narconon helping drug addicts. Brochure on that one. Uh, they have Truth About Drugs, a drug-free world, which is informing people about the harmful effects of not only drugs but also alcohol, actually. Um, so that's what Scientology is doing. Um, I myself, I purchased this book, uh, religious book, Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health from the Church of Scientology in Gothenburg in Sweden in year 1984 when I did my Christian confirmation just because I wanted to increase my intelligence, and I did. I bought this book as an extra to my Christian confirmation to learn more. And I ended up believing that this was so right for me. So I also purchased a luxury version of Dianetics in the Church of Scientology in Berlin. And it was actually in Berlin where I made my real decision to become a real Scientologist. Because before that, I was not sure what was my philosophy, what was my politics, because I was drifting around. There was a lot of socialists around me, capitalists, people talking about different things. George W. Bush talking about Jesus. Was I Christian? I didn't know until I ended up in Berlin. I said, only Scientology works for me because of many things. But Berlin has its history of war and death, and Scientology stands for the first principle in Scientology is survival. And Scientology assists survival on all survival dynamics, where the first survival dynamic is yourself. The second survival dynamic is sex, your wife and children, your family. The third survival dynamic is your group. The fourth survival dynamic is your race, and the fifth survival dynamic is other organisms like animals and nature, um, other people, organisms, and the sixth survival dynamic is the material universe, energy, space, and time. And the seventh dynamic is your spiritual soul, and the eighth dynamic is God. And the point of these survival dynamics is that you can never, never find God before you are living and surviving well on the other dynamics below God, which means that you have to survive for yourself first, and you then have to have a proper family life before you can have any group activity. You can't, I can't have Rotary as a functioning group activity before I have a functioning family life, for example, in Scientology. That's the ethics of Scientology. And it's impossible to find God before I have found a group and my own soul, my spirit. You have to have all these things functioning. And that's why I'm still having a candle burning for Buddha. Because you have to have harmony on all survival dynamics. Nobody is surviving alone. You cannot survive yourself alone. It's very, very hard. It's impossible to survive alone. I mean, you cannot survive without animals because you need food to survive. You cannot survive without vegetation. You cannot survive in the future as a species if you don't have a wife or a husband to have children, because then you're alone. When you die, you die. You need all survival dynamics, and that's why the ethical principle of Scientology is survival, and that opposes all other ethics, because all other ethics, according to Stanford University, the common denominator for engineering and financial ethics and medical ethics is that you should not harm life. You should not harm a person. If you're a medical doctor, you should not harm your patient. That's the traditional ethics, which means that you get a patient, say, okay, I'm not going to harm him. But does that mean that you're going to make something for the person to the person survives? No, the ethics doesn't say that in classic ethics. Only Scientology ethics say that you must make a deliberate, conscious effort for survival on all dynamics. You have to work for survival. That's the ethics of Scientology, and it's different. It's very different. An engineer building a bridge say, okay, I'm not going to harm life. I study engineering. I know that there is something called the safety factor and the risk factor and so on, and there is always a risk that any bridge can collapse. I say, okay, they're doing as good risk factor as they can, so the bridge is not going to collapse. And then still some people die. I say that when we're doing ethics, we're not causing harm to people. Scientology stands for like you're inverting it. You're going to maximize survival, which means that maybe you're not going to even build bridges if they can collapse. Maybe you do something else. You keep people alive. You don't take risks. You don't risk the life. You stand for survival. That's Scientology ethics. It has broad implications, the difference. Scientology volunteer ministers, they work together with other organizations like the Red Cross, perhaps also Rotary, if that's possible. Um, the way to knowledge can be found in Scientology. One Christian When the Christian Bible does not offer a way to knowledge because it's forbidden for Christian people, then Scientology can get that knowledge. And that's what I wanted to get. And that's why I believe Scientology offers more intelligence. Um, Here you have, for example, psychiatry. A Christian person may think and say that that's healthcare. That's well-educated medical doctors. And if you look deeper into that, I mean, psychiatry is about giving 400 volts electric shocks through the brain. There is an institute in Sweden called electroshock.se where it says that many people they get such electroshocks and after that they are dead. They die in psychiatry. Scientology believes that electroshocks is the modern way of crucifying Jesus. It's a way of killing good people, innocent people. And therefore, I've studied many books from the Citizens Commission on Human Rights. For example, this book, Psychiatry, The Ultimate Betrayal, is published by the Citizens Commission on Human Rights. Also, I studied the book Psychiatrists, The Man Behind Hitler. This book, written by a Scientologist, published by the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, explain how psychiatrists were the main man behind Hitler. And it's also confirmed because I visited the Jewish Museum in Berlin, where I got the truth during the psychiatry exhibition in Berlin 15 years ago, where it showed how psychiatry was torturing and killing Jewish people during World War II. But it goes further than that because psychiatry was actually also behind and supporting Adolf Hitler with many eugenics, racial theories coming and originating from psychiatry. Basically, the whole principle of racial hygiene comes from psychiatry. Uh, Here is another booklet published by the Citizens Commission on Human Rights. It says psychopharmaka creates violence and suicide. Psychiatry creates suicide and violence. And if you're looking at Sweden today, Sweden is a violent country and you have more psychiatry than ever before. 2/3 of the Swedish young men cannot do military service because they have to go to psychiatry. And what is the result? They take psychiatric drugs, they become violent, and Sweden today is a very dangerous society. It all hangs together, and I'm just looking at I'm just observing the facts here. The Citizens Commission on Human Rights has also published a DVD with the name Psychiatry, the Industry of Death, where it explains how psychiatry is more or less murdering people. As a volunteer minister, the goal, as I told you, is to maximize survival on all survival dynamics. And to that sense, Scientology is using what is called the tone scale of human emotions, which goes from 0.0 up to 40.0, where 0 is you're dead. 0.01 is you're dying. 0.03 is you feel that you're useless. 0.05 is you're in apathy. If you go higher to 1.1, covert hostility, that's something which on a political scale Scientology is defining as communism in Russia. They are covert hostility. They may, like Putin, they may show a friendly face, but you cannot trust them. Like covert hostility. 1.4, 1.5 is hate and anger. That's emotions of hate and anger. That's what Scientology is defining as fascism and Nazism, hate and anger in terms of emotions. and pain, hostility, that's 1.8 to 1.9. All of these emotions are negative emotions related to war and conflicts and psychiatry. And once you come below 2.0, the direction is only down, and psychiatry is helping you down. And the only force that can help you up, if you are in any of those negative emotions, is Dianetics, the modern science of mental health. So, for example, Russia is in a big need of Dianetics to get to more positive emotions. Socialism is described on the political scale in Scientology as antagonism 2.0. Monotony and boredom 2.5. That's where US Democrats are described in Scientology to be disinterested. They're not really interested in what they're doing. Conservatism 3.0. That's more like the Republicans in America. 3.0, they're conservative, like Donald Trump, George W. Bush. Strong interest, cheerfulness. That's more described as more like real conservatives, like the British people. They're more real conservatives than the Republicans in America. All of this is fine. I mean, there are good emotions. It's nothing bad with being in monotony, boredom, disinterested, conservative, strong interest, or being cheerful. Nothing bad with that. If Rotary can be there, very, very good. Very, very good. Nothing wrong with that. However, that's not Scientology. Scientology stands above that. And that's where marriage comes into play. Because in order to get married in Scientology, you have to be clear. And to be clear, you have to be at least 4.0 on the scale of human emotions, which means that you have to have also some enthusiasm for what you're doing. Enthusiasm, 4.0. That's to be Scientology clear. And that's when you get a clear bracelet. You get a bracelet like I have here, and then you're clear. You have enthusiasm. And if you see a girl having a same bracelet, you know she's clear and you can get married to her because I feel enthusiastic to getting married and she feels also enthusiastic. And then it's a good combination. That's a successful marriage in Scientology when you have real enthusiasm and people are clear. But clear is much more than that because it's a very scientific thing in Dianetics where you have erased all your engrams that are aberrative from the reactive mind. I'm not going to explain that to you now, but that's what it is, to be clear, which means also you cannot be in chronic enthusiasm without going through Dianetics therapy. Um, Above that, you have emotions of aesthetics at 6.0, exhilaration at 8.0, action at 20.0, and serenity of being at 40.0. But at 22.0, you have games. And games is always very good to play. I think Rotary should start to play games in order to find more of an optimal solution. You should start to play games in Rotary. And not just feeling like you're in monotony, boredom, disinterested, and conservative. Some people may have strong interest in Rotary and even be cheerful. That's very good. But Rotary should play games because that's 22.0. And if Rotary is playing games, that will lead to optimal solutions where everybody's much better off. That's coming directly from the Volunteer Minister Handbook, which is the handbook for a volunteer minister like me to help people and help the world after, you see here, a nuclear World War III where Europe and America is gone. Then a volunteer minister have to help people, and that's what I'm trying to do. Some people describe Scientology as a threat, like this book. This book is a picture of the Church of Scientology in Berlin. And it says uh, the sect business will conquer the world. Will Yeah, how the sect business of Scientology will conquer the world, and they feel that Scientology is sort of a very powerful force, a sect that will manipulate the mind of people and conquer the world. Uh, I mean, Scientology has its principles, it has its offerings. I myself, I am a C organization member, which is the highest ranking in Scientology, and the only one above me is Mr. L. Ron Hubbard. I'm serving L. Ron Hubbard. I have to be in compliance. I have to be in legal compliance with all statements of L. Ron Hubbard, because I'm a Sea Org member, Sea organization member. And when it comes to my doctorate research, that means that the 2 points from the Sea Org member duties is that I have to implement ethics on this planet and universe. And the second point is that I have to also contribute to the Sea Org's humanitarian programs, which means that I have to help people off drugs, I have to help people with conflicts, and I have to try to maximize survival on all dynamics. That's that's what I'm doing. Scientology is a very big religion in terms of books. I mean, other religions have I would say many other religions, like the Christian religion, has only one book, the Bible, but supplementary books, of course, to interpret the Bible and so, but only one main book, the Bible. The Muslims, they have only the Quran, while the Buddhists, I mean, they have built, the Buddhist faith comes from hundreds of thousands of Veda books with a lot of wisdom. And Scientology is built on all this information, which means that Scientology consists of hundreds of different books and thousands of lectures. It's a very complicated religion with a lot of information. But the goal is to gain knowledge and in the end, simplicity, which ends up in things like self-determinism and total freedom. Um, that's what Scientology basically is all about in the end. Um, and Scientology believes that war is the result of incompetent governments or an incompetent government. An incompetent government will always result in war, in that sense that incompetence triggers off conflicts. Uh, and that's why I've been talking about the Swedish government, because I feel that the Swedish government, by being a secular government in a world where academics describe the world as a religious world order, the Swedish government is incompetent. And I believe that the main source of conflicts and wars is Sweden's influence around the world in institutions like United Nations and the European Union, where secular values are gaining the upper hand and triggering off wars and conflicts. And therefore, I believe that it's very important to listen to the real academic research on how to secure peace and to maximize survival. And that's not to be offensive or criticizing my own country. It's just my own research conclusions, which are coming to these facts, and they are important facts because on September 11, 2001, my Bible, my Bible on Wall Street and the City of London in the financial industry was called the Standards of Practice Handbook from the Association of Investment Management and Research, which is today the CFA Institute, with the code of ethics, the standards of professional conduct. That's what I had to comply with. I had to be in legal compliance with all these things. I had to be in compliance and to do my job in a professional manner as a banker. That's normal. But the end result of this book was the terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001. And this book, in my opinion, uh, was not a workable ethic for global finance. As I told you before, Japan has refused to accept it. Most likely, the Muslims have also refused to accept it. I would say that probably and most likely also Russia and China has refused to accept this code of ethics, and it's not possible to translate to other languages. And it goes to my research in, here is another book. It's about religion and politics in international relations. And then I have this book. I cannot see it now. Here I do have this book, The Vatican and Permanent Neutrality. And it comes to how religion and military forces hang together in a way which makes ethical the key issue if you're going to do any sort of banking or finance on this planet. Now, I'm saying this because ethics has a lot of interpretations around the world. This book has the title Drawings from the Gulag. And some of the drawings are showing terrible drawings on how Russia under Stalin were murdering Christian priests in Russia. I say, okay, you're a priest, you believe in Jesus, you believe in the Bible, you're dead in Gulag. That was the ethics of Russia uh, in that time era. And therefore, ethics is very important to get right because otherwise it can have disastrous consequences. Disastrous. More interesting is that in my research I came across this book. And it says Danish Neutrality, a study in the foreign policy of a small state. It's written by Carsten Holbrod, and is arguing very strongly that Denmark as a member, as a very real member, and even the leader of NATO in Europe in Brussels, is a neutral country. Never heard of that before. But Denmark is, according to this book, a neutral country. And that's where many things come together into my research to understand religion, international relations, neutrality, and my own place in this world to maximize survival on all survival dynamics. As I said, my research is not scientific, it's about art. And here is the Scientology art book written by L. Ron Hubbard. And this book is the foundation for all Scientology art. If you go and watch a Tom Cruise movie or something, most likely it's based on this book about art. Scientology is producing art in its own way to make an emotional impact and to change the world into a better place. And to that extent, I also have this book. It's a book with a picture of Jesus Christ on it. I also have a pen. I have a pen from the Vatican with my own name. It says Keith Vatican on the pen. There's the pen I have from the Vatican. And I'm planning to write the most important conclusions, recommendations that I reach in my research to try to do my best to implement ethics on this planet and to contribute myself to the humanitarian objective of the C organization in Scientology to maximize survival on this planet and this universe, as is my religious mission in my research. There are many people objecting to that. In Sweden, the school minister in public discriminated against Scientology. She described Scientology as mumbo jumbo from Quacksalvare. She said that Scientologists are like ridiculous people talking nonsense in the schools, and therefore the Swedish government decided to shut down what was actually ranked by the Swedish school ministry as the #1 best elite school in Sweden. Studemaskolan was the best school in Sweden, but it was run according to, or accused of being run, according to Scientology principles from applied uh, school applied scholastics, which was established by L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology. So they felt that applied scholastics was like Scientology propaganda, and they just closed down the school. And to produce Scientology art in Sweden uh, became became difficult for the children in school. But my intention is to still produce art in Sweden at universities in America under the title liberal arts. We have the professor of psychiatry, Professor Thomas Satz, who was the founder of the Citizens Commission on Human Rights. He said that psychiatry is not healthcare. Psychiatry is not science. It's politics. And it's public control. It's a way to control the public so that the public is in compliance with the norms of society. And in the past, of course, I mean, if you were homosexual, you ended up in psychiatry. You got electroshocks. They cut out a part of your brain, so you couldn't think anymore. You walked around like a zombie if you were lucky. Otherwise, you were dead. That's what psychiatry is all about. If you're different than the norm, you end up in psychiatry. And today, when the norm is to be homosexual in Sweden, it's quite a scary proposition, because if you're not homosexual in Sweden, you end up in psychiatry. You get electroshocks, and they cut out your brain, and they give you pills, and it's really adjust to the norm. Otherwise, you end up in psychiatry. That's the idea. That's why psychiatry and governments are working in close alliance. Scientology, they say we oppose that, and instead I have this. This badge from L. Ron Hubbard. It says, "The artist injects the spirit of life into a culture." That's what I plan to do as a Scientologist. And if you're not a Scientologist, you're in a danger zone. For example, there was a man in Sweden. He was on a beach in a mobile home writing music. He was writing songs. Suddenly the police came and knocked on the door, bang, 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 and they brought him in the police car, you know, to psychiatry, where he got electroshocks, 400 volts through the head, 400 volts. I did it again and again and again. And after that, I never saw him again. I assume he died in psychiatry and they just got rid of the body, cremation or something. It's dangerous. It's dangerous to violate the norms and to create something new if you're not a clear Scientologist to do it, because psychiatry hates people who are creative and violating the norms. I mean, if the norm in Los Angeles is to be creative and to do new things, okay, then it's fine. Then you end up in psychiatry if you're not doing it. That's how psychiatry operates. I'm a relative to the Swedish police chief, and he was also the chief of the Swedish secret police, Sven-Åke Hjelmroth. I'm also a relative to Bo Gustafsson, who won the Silver Olympic Game medal in Los Angeles many years ago. I'm just mentioning this because I do have the police within my own family. I'm part of a family that used to be the government police of Sweden, basically. The secret police chief was my relative, so I know what I'm talking about. I also had a conversation with a police officer in Danderyd in Sweden, where that police officer, I was just trying to investigate, is psychiatry healthcare or and help, or is it something else? And I asked this police officer, what is psychiatry for really? And he said, the police officer told me, psychiatry is a punishment. It's a punishment. Psychiatry is a punishment. People in society, they believe that psychiatry is healthcare. They feel that it's some sort of help. If they have a depression, they go to a psychiatrist and they believe that the psychiatrist is going to help them. No, no. The psychiatrist is going to torture them and maybe murder them and rape them or something. It's dangerous. I also went to the Citizens Commission on Human Rights Museum in Los Angeles to understand the history of psychiatry, where it comes from. Psychiatry really comes from punishing people in a belief that the harder you punish a person, the better the person will learn to adjust to the society. Let's take, for example, in the old days when homosexuality was considered to be a crime. Then a psychiatrist came and took a homosexual person and he gave the psychiatrist electroshocks. They cut off a piece of the brain. They put the person in cells with mattresses. They um, they were like binding the arms together like this, so it cannot move the arms or the legs. They sterilized people in psychiatry. They used drugs. They even like were stitching out the eyes of people in psychiatry, and they were raping people in psychiatry. They were like using violence, like punching people hard in psychiatry, and they were definitely also like removing freedom from people. They were putting them in cells, like restricting freedom of movement, and then they also murder people in psychiatry. That's the Museum of Psychiatry in Hollywood in Los Angeles, and that's how how governments felt that they can make people adjust to the norms in society. So they were like, the harder you punish a person, he will. It's like you say, okay, I'm homosexual, but if you give him like a hard fist and say you're not going to it's not allowed, maybe you say, okay, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be homosexual anymore. That's the principles of science, psychiatry. While Scientology is saying, okay, you are you, and you should have your freedom, and you should be yourself. You should be self-determined. It's two very different ways of looking at mental health, really. And therefore, this year, this spring, I decided myself to sign my religious C organization contract. um, so I signed myself a CEO contract to serve Scientology for the next 1 billion years. 1 billion years, I'm going to be Scientology religious. Um, Scientology believes that all political problems can be resolved through reasoning. Reasoning. So you just have to, if you have a political problem, you just have to reason with the people in order to solve that problem. Um, and Scientology has been reasoning in many ways, producing Hollywood films with Tom Cruise and L. Ron Hubbard. He was also doing many things. Scientology has different churches and offices around the world. I studied the Philadelphia doctorate course in Scientology in Switzerland many years ago. I qualified as a Scientology doctorate many years ago in Switzerland, but I'm doing it again here in Sweden just because I feel that just like a Muslim, you have to continuously repeat the religious messages over and over again. It's not enough to pray to Allah only one time in Mecca. You have to pray every day. You have to pray 5 times every day. And Scientology to me is very much the same. I have to pray and I have to study my religious scriptures day after day to to stay on top of my understanding of Scientology. I've also been lecturing for Scientology. I was a lecturer at University of Zurich's medical school for some of the best doctors, medical doctors in the world. And I held a lecture about psychiatry, the industry of death. And I also explained for the students that psychiatrists were the men behind Hitler. And next to me was a professor in psychiatry saying the opposite. And it was like, yeah, like the Swedish government. People should listen to both opinions and have the opposition there. And Swiss neutrality, they put me there just to ensure that the medical students they get like both, if you would say, opinions. I say, okay, I have one opinion the professor of psychiatry have a contrary opinion. The students, they have to listen to both and make up their own ethics. I cannot force anyone to believe in my ethics, but I can certainly inform people about my beliefs. And now Buddha is saying, and the candle is still burning here. Yes, Buddha and the candle burning. Buddha is saying, deliver them not but the wisdom which I give. Bring to them then an honesty. Bring to them an honesty that they have not known. In such a way, handle then the problems of politics. So, Buddha is saying that I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to tell you something that Buddha is not saying. I'm just going to be honest about myself. And to be honest with you, on the next slide, I'm saying that Christmas in Sweden is the worst in the world. Because look, I have two wives, but I'm going to celebrate Christmas alone. And I'm not alone doing that. Because 2 million people in Sweden, a small country, 2 million people are celebrating Christmas alone. And single households, almost 40% of Sweden are living alone in single households. They have no wife, no boyfriend, no husband, nothing. No, maybe a dog, I don't know. Highest in Europe. There is no more lonely people than the people in Sweden. In Europe, the rest of Europe is around 25% are living alone in single households, most likely young people, students and so, normal. But in Sweden, almost 40% alone. I'm I'm 55 years old, living alone. What's that? Having two wives, still alone. And also the Swedish Research Institute, Vetenskapsrådet, they are saying that romantic loneliness is higher among men than women. That means romantic men like me are more lonely in Sweden than women are. I say that's an honesty about Sweden and what is really, really wrong and bad with Sweden. Sweden is not a good country. It's a violent country and it's a lonely country. Sweden was very proud announcing the world's first feminist government a while ago. What does that mean? That means that feminism became the god of Sweden. Feminism, gender equality. Gender equality was God in Sweden. It was replacing. It's a secular country. They say God doesn't exist. Here we have gender equality, and that's all. That put me into a lot of sort of conflicts of interest. For example, I was a board member of the Red Cross. The Red Cross is a neutral organization, and I was just asking myself, what does all this mean? Sweden joining NATO, feminism, and all that. Does that ring well with the values of the Red Cross? No, it does not. I mean, I'm not only supposed to support Ukraine. The Red Cross is neutral, supporting as much humanitarian aid to Russia as to Ukraine. You have to stay neutral. It goes back to neutrality and the religious values from the Vatican on top of all neutrality. Rotary is managed with the philosophy service above self. But what do you put above self? I mean, what values are above yourself when you serve in Rotary? Really? I went to a Christian meeting in Kiel here in Sweden, where Pastor Kjell-Åke Simonsson, during his preaching, was saying that feminism is from Satan. And he said that next to his wife. Feminism is from Satan. And then he went on and saying, this idea where women are always right and men are always wrong, that's not just not right. It's not true. After that, this pastor, he ended up dead, very tragic. But he was saying from his heart that feminism is from Satan. It's evil. Gender equality is evil and is supported by the Vatican itself, because when the United Nations went with documents to the Vatican years ago, the Vatican was just ripping the documents and saying that's violating the Bible. We're not going to have gender equality in Vatican. Vatican has no female voting. The Vatican has no female priests. The Pope went to Sweden saying it violates the Bible of having female priests in Sweden. They're not qualified. That was the message from neutrality to Sweden. And that's where I felt that Sweden was taking a different direction than Switzerland. Sweden was losing its neutrality. It was not winning, it was losing. And it was losing also economically because a teacher in Switzerland is earning is earning 3 or 4 times more in salary than in Switzerland and pays almost no taxes. So I say net result is that a Swiss teacher, as a teacher in Switzerland, is earning around 5 times more than a teacher in Sweden. Let's say a teacher in Sweden is getting $2,000 a month. A teacher in Switzerland is making $10,000 a month. That's the difference. It has financial and economic implications of losing neutrality in Sweden, and it relates to international relations, what Sweden is doing on the international arena. The Swedish government is reactive, just like psychiatry. They say, okay, something is wrong, we're going to do something. They're never proactive, they're reactive. And I say, okay, a lot of people are alone in Sweden. We're going to spend $30 million on like yeah, solving this society problem with lonely people because it produces, mental illness to be alone. Psychiatry gets more patients when people are alone in Sweden. So they're going to spend $30 million on reducing this human suffering from being alone. I say, toilet paper is worth more than that money because the Swedish government spending $30 million on nonsense. The Swedish government is not going to solve the problem of me having 2 wives and being alone in Sweden. They're going to make the problem even worse. They're not problem solvers. They're stealing tax money and they're wasting it to nothing just to pay their own salaries. And that's psychiatry. And that's why I'm a Scientologist, because I am completely opposing what the government is doing, especially here in Sweden. It's corrupt. It's corrupt. And therefore, the vision of my PhD is to create a new civilization. It's never been done before in Scientology, but it has to be done. It must be done because nothing else works. And my mission is that a civilization is just as successful as its dreams, and the dreams are created by artists. So I'm repeating here, my vision is to create a new civilization, and the mission is to create dreams by being a good artist, to have a strong emotional impact, to make people take constructive action in the right direction. And this has been approved by a professor. It's been approved, to my surprise, by the university in America that I'm going to write a thesis about international relations and Scientology. And basically, the goal of Scientology used to be to produce a clear planet. That means a planet with people in enthusiasm. Enthusiastic people. Scientology wants to make everyone enthusiastic. That's fine. When playing happy music and everybody smiling, that's fake. That's fake. It's not real. Because the real thing is that no matter what Scientology is trying to do to make a happy planet, it's not real, because psychiatry and old ideologies, old religions are suppressing people. You have Islam, you have Jews, you have socialists, you have Christians, you have liberals, you have Buddhists, you have Democrats, you have feminists, you have Republicans, you have Hinduists, you have Presbyterians, you have environmentalists, you have moderates, you have communists, you have HBTQ people, you have anarchists, you have punks, you have dictators, you have mafia, you have police states, you have Maoism even, you have Nazis, you have Luxembourgers, you have burgers, you have you have capitalists, you have Frankfurt schools, you have all of these kind of different things. And all of it has proven that the only thing it does is to result in conflicts and war, and no enthusiasm whatsoever. It goes low on the emotional tone scale. At best, it's monotony, it's boredom, it's conservatism. Rarely any cheerfulness can happen sometimes. But it can also be anger, hate. Political debates are usually not very happy. So we're stuck in a planet where psychiatry is like a big, big blanket on all of this happiness that people deserve. It's like a black enchantment. And there is even a text about the black enchantment in Scientology, where someone, a person, is going to hold a golden ball above your head to make you go sane. And that day, hopefully, will happen one day. But I'm saying this because the ultimate goal of Scientology these days is not to make a clear planet anymore, it's to replace psychiatry with Dianetics, the modern science of mental health. Scientology is after all the government spendings on psychiatry. I'm after all the money that this local town is spending on psychiatry. This money should be invested in Scientology instead. And Scientology means real business. Scientology has already acquired the town hall in Clearwater for many $1 million. Scientology wants to get rid of psychiatry once and for all from this planet. Because psychiatry is destructive, it's destroying lives, it's creating human suffering, and people deserve better. To live, to have a life, that's a very valuable gift. I believe it can only come from God. No chemistry, no biotechnology can produce real human life. You can do cloning, yeah, but originally someone started the whole thing. I believe in God. I believe God creates civilizations without religion. It's a barbaric world where barbarics rule everything. And Sweden is an extremely good example of barbarics because before Jesus and before the Bible, Sweden was one of the most barbaric people in the world. I mean, Sweden was barbarics and Vikings, killing people with the axe, raping women. That's Sweden. Only the Bible and Jesus religion could civilize a people like that here in Sweden. I believe again that Scientology is the second Christian epoch on earth to civilize people so they understand the destructiveness of psychiatry, and it's no benefit to anyone. It's no good to suppress people into negative emotions so they just want to go to war. No, Scientology wants all the money that governments are investing and spending on psychiatry. And we're talking not only millions of dollars, we're not talking billions of dollars, we're talking trillions of dollars worldwide that governments are investing and spending in psychiatry and psychology to destroy mental health, while Dianetics, the modern science of mental health, is to improve mental health into higher states of emotional well-being. If a person feels depressed, going to a psychiatrist, all a psychiatrist can do and will do is to make the person angry. And then the person is fit for war. If a depressed person comes to Scientology, try to cheer him up, make him feel good, bring him to the movies, look at Tom Cruise, have some fun, listen to a good CD music, entertainment, Hollywood. That's Scientology. And everybody hates that, don't they? No, I don't think so. They say that they don't like Scientology, and then they buy Tom Cruise tickets anyway. Scientology is winning it, and we're going to replace psychiatry with Scientology, and that's the goal. And that's part of my doctorate thesis, to contribute to making a better planet for Scientology to really try to help mankind. And with that, I say that we Scientologists, we are the hope of man. The only hope. Mankind's salvation lies within our hands. With our tech and ability, we can create here on earth a real heaven where man can be free. You hear that? Scientology can create a paradise on earth. While the Bible says that's impossible, Scientology has the technology and knowledge to create paradise on earth. It is possible. After that, I say we're going back to Buddha. Our candle is still burning here. We got Buddha with a burning candle for wisdom and enlightenment. And in his book, Scientology, A New Slant on Life, which I gave to my mother when she became 80 years old on her birthday, I gave this book to my mother. Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard, founder of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard, he wrote the following passages. A society in which women are taught anything but the management of a family, the care of men, and the creation of the future generation is a society which is on its way out. The historians can peg the point where a society begins its sharpest decline of the instant, at the instant when women begin to take part on equal footing with men in politics and business affairs, since this means that the men are decadent and the women are no longer women. This is not a sermon on the role or position of women. It's a statement of bold and basic fact. And with that, L. Ron Hubbard is saying that a feminist government in Sweden is a guarantee that Sweden is going to be on its sharpest decline ever as a failed state and a failed nation. Don't believe in gender equality from Sweden, because wisdom from thousands of years is saying that this is when a country, a state, a nation, a people is going to fail more than ever before. Sweden is a failed state, Europe's most violent country. Sweden had a feminist government, and wisdom from Buddhism, wisdom from all other religions, is saying all the same thing. Gender equality destroys a country because men are decadent and women are no longer women. And that is the sad truth of Christmas in Sweden, where I'm spending Christmas alone, no woman by my side, because the women say, we're going to have gender equality. I say, okay, that's not my religion. Yeah. Some intelligent people have said that the ones who destroy marriage destroy civilization. And there we have Sweden today. They destroy marriage because I cannot enjoy a marriage life. I'm alone. Sweden is destroying marriages for millions of people. I was in contact with a Swedish man. He wrote to me that his wife was out dancing every weekend. She met different men. She had sex with different men every weekend. And eventually he got fed up with it and he filed for a divorce. She took everything from the man in the divorce case. You know, the divorce laws of Sweden gives everything to the woman, nothing to the man. He ended up homeless in a tent, drinking alcohol to try to survive, because he wrote to me, alcohol keeps my body warm during the minus 20 degrees Celsius nights during the Christmas here in Sweden. It's pretty cold, yeah. Yeah. And he cannot work anymore. It's not fit to work. It's just drinking alcohol. Alcoholics don't have to work in Sweden. That's how gender equality is treating a good man who was trying to to provide for his family and have a Merry Christmas in Sweden. Sweden is spreading. I have a friend from Norway. He said the gender equality policies of Sweden is like a virus. It's much more dangerous than HIV, AIDS, or COVID-19 because it goes much faster from woman to woman all around the world. They believe in gender equality, and then you cannot talk to them anymore. He married two Swedish women, and both ended up in divorce. He lost everything, and today he's living in a church. They were kind enough to let him live in a church because he has a good heart, but he lost everything just because he got exposed to gender equality. Gender equality spreads like a virus. It goes quickly between America and Sweden, and crosses into United Nations and the European Union. It goes into the board of directors everywhere. It goes into Mecca, even in Saudi Arabia. It's, women in Saudi Arabia, they're supposed to work these days. Only Iran is trying to resist feminism, I think. But gender equality is that kind of policy. It's like a very powerful thing. Harvard professor Samuel P. Huntington believes that religion is the future world order. I hope he's right, but Sweden is definitely trying to do anything in its power to make sure that religion is going to disappear from this planet, and it's going to be gender equality instead. Even the Church of Scientology in Sweden is today preaching gender equality because they're afraid of the government. They're afraid. Only the Sea organization, myself here in Sweden, dares to stand up for the original scriptures. It's my duty. It's my duty to stand up for the original manuscripts directly from L. Ron Hubbard. And I'm telling you that gender equality is not a successful future. It is the biggest failure you can have if you believe in that. And with that, we go back to Buddha. And Buddha say, I have spoken to you. You will study soon. Meanwhile, goodbye. And with that, I say goodbye. I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. This is a Christmas card from Scientology where my clear bracelet, this clear symbol, is at the top of the Christmas tree, spreading the enlightenment all around the world that I'm sharing with you today as the beginning to define my research problem in my PhD research on international relations. As Scientologist is wearing this gold bracelet only because that's the only way to identify a leader who cannot otherwise be identified. I'm having this gold bracelet just because you don't recognize me as a leader. Nobody knows that I'm a leader, and that's why I'm wearing gold bracelet. I'm wearing gold bracelet just because you don't know that I'm a leader. And with that, all I want to say is that next year, which is called year AD 75 in Scientology religious counting, Scientology has a different religious counting, starting from year 1950 as the base, year zero, when the book Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health was published. And next year is year AD 75. And I just say that year AD 75 will be the year when dreams become real. And that's all from me. Next year is the year when dreams become real. Thank you for listening to me, and goodbye.